Can you listen us? Hello, good morning.
Good morning to all. Welcome to this joint event, which is organized by IoT, ENTSO-E, and with the strong support of the European Commission. Today we will try to find the answer for the question if EV charging is only a building block or a game changer in the energy transition. I'm Nuran Dekany and I'm working for ENTSO-E in the innovation team. And if we move to the next slide, I will run through the agenda quickly. So we will have 2 blocks today. In the first half, after the 2 secretary generals of these 2 associations will set the scene, we will have 2 different views from the European Commission, one from the DGNR and the other one from DGConnect. Then actually the apropos of this event today is that both ENTSO-E and IoT just recently published a position paper each on the electromobility, which will be presented in this first half of the event. And then also we will ask Robin Loos from BEUC to share with us how the consumer side looks to this issue nowadays. In the second half, it will be a little bit more interactive than the first one. We will have 2 panel discussions where we invited people from a very wide range of the spectrum to try to get a very comprehensive overview of the subject. And in this panels, we really want to open the discussion to you. We are looking forward to have your questions and comments, which you will have your chances to give to us. And as a closing, we will look to a little bit different approach from the LF Energy. Antonello Monti will present this, and it will be focusing on the open source approach on the electromobility. So just quickly to show how you can join the discussion on the next slide. You have 2 ways. The first is actually you can just raise your virtual hand. You can find this option on the right-hand side in this panel of the tool. This will be only used in the panel discussions. So when the moderator will call your name, and then the organizers will unmute you, so you will be able to speak and ask your question. But you can also ask a question in a written manner. May I ask everybody to switch the microphone off, please? Thank you. And so please use the Slido by using this event code, or you can scan just this QR code, and you will get to the slide. And we will check all the time Slido and try to retrieve your questions and comments. Okay, what you shouldn't use is actually the question and the chat function of this GoToWebinar tool. So just use Slido or raise the hand, and then we will organize the questions and answers. Okay, so first we will start with Damir Filipovic, who is the Secretary General of IoT-I. And Damir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Moran. Good morning to everybody. Welcome to our webinar. As Moran mentioned, organized together with ENTSO-E and with the support of the European Commission, DGConnect, DG Energy. I'm very happy to see that we have almost 120 participants already, and we just started with very introductory remarks. What I think is very important, besides the 2 papers that ENTSO-E and IoT-I will try to present here, is to mention that at least from IoT-I side, this is not something that is, I would say, brand new topic for us. We are working already for a couple of years on the online energy data marketplaces concept. which of course has a link to the topic of EV charging as well. And I would say overall on energy transition and impact on our other sectors, including mobility. And we will try to kind of show together from this example today and from the, let's say, that point of view, how this can sit together. And the other topic is also one of our, let's say, project, which is called Electromobility Task Force, and to show basically how we can offer a sort of, let's say, a view or solution in making sure that there is enough, I would say, charging points for enough infrastructure for the electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging, and then actually how actually our members and our solutions can actually help to promote this in Europe and actually engage all the relevant stakeholders in a dialogue around all of these topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Damir. In the meanwhile, my colleague Carlotta just posted the link for the Slido, which you should use in the chat. So you can just directly click there, and then you can post your questions or comments. So as I can see, Sonia, the Secretary General of ENTSO-E, had some connecting issues in the morning. But while we are trying to solve this, I think we can move forward to Rolf, who is here with us from the DGConnect.
All right, good morning, everyone. Can you put up the slide, or should I share my screen? Or
Is there, Rolf? You can just say next when you are ready.
Okay, I'm ready. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the invitation. Thanks for ENTSO-E and IoTI organizing the seminar. My talk is about digital strategy for energy. It complements the talk later on by Mark van Stiphout from DG, who looks from the energy side. So next slide. So actually, I'm working in DGConnect in the Internet of Things unit. We are, as Internet of Things, a horizontal unit dealing with research innovation on the digital side, but also close links to the policy side in farming, in energy, in mobility, and healthy living. So next one. You've heard that the Commission announced a lot of targets and strategies this year. Lately, a digital decade in March of this year, bringing up the targets for 2030 on digital innovation. You see the compass over here. It's going around skills, innovating and modernizing government services, a lot about business, and electric mobility is one of the key challenges, one of the hottest topics for transition in the mobility sector. And it's a lot about infrastructures. It's about digital infrastructures, connectivity, cutting-edge semiconductors, data edge cloud, computing infrastructure, but also it's linked also back to infrastructure in the context of recovery. The Resilience Recovery Funds, with more than 670 billion euro of investment planned with member states, also includes infrastructure for electric vehicle charging. So that's quite relevant as well. And there we have to avoid fragmentation, have the relevant standards in place, and should be clear what we want. So next slide. So the digital innovation has a strong contribution to environment and climate change. So it's estimated that there will be a reduction of 15 to 20% of total emissions of greenhouse gas emissions with the use of digital technologies. That does not include yet the innovation in terms of new digital components and technology, which is energy efficient by itself. One part of that includes Destination Earth, digital twins, modeling, and simulation of the effects and mitigation of climate change on the one hand, but the strong part is also in sectors like electricity, mobility, and home and buildings. For instance, there are figures that the electrification of the energy grid uses 40 to 50% of renewable energy already today. There's some strong progress, but in other sectors like heating, for instance, in Germany, only 14% of resources are climate neutral. Compared to Denmark, they use more than 50%. If you go to the mobility sector, the figures are even lower. There's only 6% of using renewable energy. So in smart mobility, there is a huge potential of reducing transport emissions by 37% and smart buildings by 17%. So next slide. Moving towards digital means, we have to connect the electricity grid on the one hand with, the integration of renewables. Integration of renewables is one key part of that. And there, with the volatility of the energy, you have to try to match demand and supply side, which is a system issue. For that, we have to foster electrification of the electricity on the one hand. As you see, have heard, there's some progress on that side, but also there's a structural change towards decentralization. And the digital technologies allow more decentralized intelligence. So key value proposition would be more decentralized edge intelligence for more comfort of services at the consumption side, at the consumer side, for more awareness of using green energy in the consumption and to get best possible tariffs and incentives. So what here still, the key challenge is system integration. A system integration platform which cuts across, for instance, the electric vehicle, the building, the building in a certain context, the district, or the smart city. So that's not trivial. We have challenges related to interoperability across different sectors, and there are huge issues related to data integration or data integration gateways. At the same time, the grid design has to enable more flexibility and could benefit from the evolution of batteries and the battery you serve in the car. From the Internet of Things digital point of view, the baseline here is system connectivity on the one hand, but also on the other hand, large discussion on how to get agreements and a conceptual framework for data access and data sharing, still a hot topic. So next slide, please. Looking from the user perspective, the things are not getting easier. You have the driver of the car, you have the car itself, and as I mentioned, the data, you need open data exchange, you need different market rules and stable market rules, and then you have to adapt the electricity grid to the needs of the user and the consumer when he wants to charge the car. But looking at what is behind that, you want to drive your car. It depends on the weather. It depends on summer or winter. You might want to use green energy to charge your car. You want to have flexibility in mobility services and using the car. You're also interested in, what does it cost? Certainly, you need a parking space for that and a free slot for a charging station. You need navigation services to get to the charging station. You need to know something about your battery. How much reserve do I have? How much autonomy do I need? How much time do I want to spend for the charging? You need the interoperability to the charging station, and you need to know, about others. Where is rush hours? Where are peaks in the charging stations? Where it's quite unlikely, I get slot on the reservation. So it's quite complicated. So in essence, it's a combination of different data you have to get together. It's a combination of different data services, which maybe not one alone can do it, but you're looking for the best offers on the market. We would call it, it's a data-driven service marketplace, where at the end of the day, of course, the consumer will be ready to pay for the service if it's as easy, as convenient as possible. So that, still has to emerge, and we don't have a clear player on that side, and that is the user perspective. So on the next slide, and my last slide, goes back to the system perspective. And again, we have a concurrent optimization of the space. I took a figure from a study which is not yet published on cost-efficient integration of electric vehicles into the electricity grid. And you see this optimization space around the technical issues of the vehicle, the mobility needs of the driver, the geographical environment and context in member states, in urban or rural areas, or on the highway, and certainly about we have to distinguish between public and private charging, or mixture between public and private, what we call different categories. So I'm quite happy that the Alliance IoTi worked on that paper. And last but not least, you have to look at the dynamics of the system. What are the system-specific services and to regulate the system control and balance. And they are the taxonomy created by ENTSO-E will have a certain value in order to drive the discussion. And that basically sets the scene for today. I'm very happy, that you stimulate that discussion, and I wish you a nice discussion on the workshop. And I hope now by the time that Mark has joined, and I pass the floor to him. Maybe last slide, to mention that we have a CrossDG working group with different projects, a data working group, which also started working on EV charging under the bridge framework. But you also may look at the other initiatives, which are on the slide, and the slide will be shared later on. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you very much, Rolf. And as you were just saying, it's over to you, Mark. You are muted.
Now it should work.
Now it's perfect. Thank you.
All right. Good. Thank you very much, Rolf. Thanks very much to ENTSO-E and the Alliance for the Internet of Things to organizing this webinar. I think it's a very, very timely an important topic, so I'm happy to be here. I'm sorry I'm a bit late. I had to go out of the house and I was back later than planned, but I'm happy that Rolf was able to, that we were able to switch places. So I will see if I can still add something to what he was saying. Of course, I will take a bit the perspective from DG Energy and maybe say how we think that the topic of discussion today is important from DG Energy's perspective, and also what we are doing about it. So first of all, of course, I cannot start a presentation without talking about the Green Deal and Fit for 55. Of course, within our DG, many colleagues are very, very busy with the legal proposals that should come out somewhere in July in relation to renewables and energy efficiency, in order to update those legal texts so that with 2030 they match the ambition that has been confirmed by the Parliament and the Council to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 55%. So of course, those are the key things that are the focus within our DG at the moment. We work very closely with DG Klima, who is looking, of course, at ETS, but also at new rules for cars to strengthen the emission limits for cars. So that will be an important driver for electric vehicles, and also in cooperation with DG Move, who is looking at the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Directive and who is reviewing that. And this is, of course, also very important because electric cars and car charging is a key part of it. And I think, as you also rightly identified in your papers, the recovery fund, for which we now see the plans coming in, and some of them have been published, you will have seen that a lot of countries will invest or plan to invest a lot in electric car charging points. So we can really expect an acceleration of the rollout of electric cars. both from the legal perspective of stronger requirements and the support for infrastructure through the Recovery Fund and the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Directive. And of course, this is very good news, but it will also make the question of how do we manage charging of cars in an intelligent way more pressing. And so I think that's why a seminar like today is very, very timely. And I think that the urgency of this question and the importance of this question will only increase in the coming months and years, because with all these investments, people will really start realizing everywhere in Europe that this is a real challenge. And I think that from the energy perspective and with the infrastructure rules, in particular, if I look at the clean energy package, we are well prepared to handle this challenge, but not everything is there yet. The clean energy package with its with some key provisions on flexibility markets, on a more active role for network operators to provide market signals, if possible, to reward flexibility, and the necessity of regulators to also recognize that as investments that should be taken into account as part of the cost of a network operator. We set the principles very clearly in which way the market has to go. We have supported that with a lot of projects in Horizon 2020. A lot of projects starting with focusing really on individual technologies and how they can contribute with flexibility, to, in the last years, really focusing on bigger projects where TSO and DSO cooperation is key in order to see how these flexibilities markets should work. So talking about projects like coordinate, interface, and now the most recent one and also the biggest one that we have, namely OneNet, where a lot of TSOs and DSOs are involved. A lot of suppliers, aggregators, also from the IoT angle, are involved, where we have explicitly asked also to interact with the consumer dimension projects. So not just talking about how network operators should organize the flexibility, but also see how suppliers can work with consumers to actually bring this flexibility to the market. And so to make sure that this is turned into products and services that consumers like. So we're making a lot of steps here, but we're not there yet. We want to continue this with Horizon Europe. The work program, as you know, there has a draft that has been published. This will not change much. There are some delays for the real final publication, having nothing to do with, let's say, the content of the calls that are talking about smart grids, for example. But in Horizon Europe, we want to support this further development, not through more and bigger pilot projects, because we think we've reached kind of the maximum there, but we are focusing basically on three things. One is also making it easier, making it again easier from the consumer perspective or from the supplier or the aggregator perspective to bring flexibility to the market. So this has to do with comparing different solutions in different countries and testing things that have been tested in one place also in another country. Working on a catalog of products or appliances and the flexibility that they can provide, so that it becomes very easy for everybody to see, okay, there is this appliance, this is what it can do, this is the type of flexibility it can bring, and that is recognized and valorized as easy and quickly as possible. And thirdly, on the data exchange. Making sure that we create a seamless data exchange to underpin these flexibility markets. And this has to do with the issue of scalability. I think we all value the projects, and we've been through Bridge and with a lot of your help also working to make sure that what happens within one project is compatible with another one. So this minimum viable product idea that we've been working on through the Bridge data management working group. Testing different solutions across projects is also something that we will promote in Horizon Europe, because we also there will support the development of energy data spaces, and we will ask these individual projects to also make the solutions compatible across the different projects. So all of this is to make the solution scalable, because we will not be fast enough with our development of this e-mobility and flexible charging or flexibility markets in general if everything depends on individual projects that define their tailor-made platforms, interactions, etc. And of course, this has two dimensions. On the one hand, it is linked to how the market is organized, what type of products network operators are procuring, how flexibility is rewarded. But this here we are, our colleagues in the internal market unit are looking at what the issues are and if there is a need, and if so, how we need to amend the network codes that are already there and that have pushed this flexibility market, for example, in the area of balancing, but not in the area of congestion management. So that is one thing. And there, of course, there is also a recognition that different networks or different areas in Europe have different needs in terms of flexibility. So it's not an aim to harmonize everything, but it is meant to make sure that there is a minimum level of harmonization and scalability across the different markets. And the same, maybe even more so, applies to the data exchange dimension of it. If we want to make these markets scalable, we need to make sure that the data exchange that is needed to support these markets, to ensure the remote control, the smart charging, all the price signals, the control signals to the car, to the charging point, etc. If all these things need to work, and I think the car is obviously a very good example, they need to work across Europe. The car owners will expect that they can travel across Europe with their car and that they don't need to install a new data protocol in every country or in every distribution or transmission system that they connect their car to. So in a way, the e-mobility case is a big driver for a lot of other flexibility that then probably can follow because of the clear requirements that e-mobility puts on scalability, harmonization of data exchange, etc. So on the data exchange, also the clean energy package sets the principles. Our colleagues in the citizen and consumer unit are at the moment looking at implementing acts for smart metering and consumption data. And we're also looking at the overarching principles that need to accompany this data exchange. And so this is, all of these things together is what we're also looking at in the digitalization of energy action plan that we are working on, or that our unit is coordinating for the DG. But this is obviously something that is a joint effort of many colleagues, and not just our DG, but also DGConnect, like colleagues like Rolf, for example. We want to make sure that by March next year, we present a plan that shows how these different measures interact with each other, and that when we talk about smart data in buildings and appliances and flexibility markets, that all of these things work together to create a energy services market that is driven by data, that promotes flexibility, that promotes a better grid management, that promotes smart charging, that also allows better modeling and monitoring of the grid or system integration. So I think the general feeling, I think, is also, of course, that once we start sharing these data, we don't know what new business models will come. So we need to make sure that whatever we set up as a data governance model and a data exchange model is dynamic and flexible. And so we're currently spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to set this up in a way that at the same time is dynamic, but also makes a real difference in creating the scalable data exchange structures and infrastructure in an intangible way, so to say, meaning intangible infrastructure, so that we can really push the development of e-mobility markets, etc. So this is what we're doing at the moment. As again, I think this discussion is very timely. So we're looking really forward to continue this discussion with you, because in the coming weeks and months, we really want to figure out what the concrete steps are that we can take with the action plan to to promote the data exchange, starting with e-mobility as one of the big drivers, but also looking beyond it as a way to help the decarbonization of the energy system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for shedding some light on all the activities you are working on at DGNR regarding this subject. We have now Sonja Tuig, the Secretary General of ENTSO-E, with us. So a little bit switching in the agenda, but now, Sonja, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning to you all. Thank you, Laurent. Thank you, Mark, for a very interesting presentation. As Secretary General of ENTSO-E, I'm delighted to speak with you with regard to the building blocks for a system of integrated systems. So very much, you know, for the future, it's a very exciting time. As a system operator, we are very key in developing further the infrastructure and the support for electromobility. And I'd like to talk in my next slide about the true system of interconnected systems. What do we mean by that? Between now and 2030, there will be an increased move towards a system of interconnected systems. What is very much at the key is system operators not just looking at horizontal connections, but also vertical connections with our DSO colleagues and also the consumers and the customers. And this interconnection of systems is vital for the development of the industry. What is very, very clear is that the deep electrification is imminent, and with at the heart of that is electromobility, heating and cooling. The energy system integration, which is beyond the power sector, includes electromobility and is no longer purely a distribution matter or a customer matter, but also coming and affecting the role of the TSOs and how they support it. We, of course, are expecting a boom, a very, very large acceleration of the electromobility in the next decade. Of course, it brings challenges, but also it brings opportunities. And of course, I'm here for you today to talk about those opportunities. In my next slide, I'd like to talk about the roadmap for 2030, for the next 10 years. We are developing a pan-European energy system which at its heart has no net emissions of greenhouse gases, and the future is to achieve that by 2050. You have a number of different flagships of the roadmap that we see before you. One very key is the Cluster 1, which is focusing on a one system of integrated systems. At the heart of that is the market, the sector coupling, and the transport of RES in Europe. Market expansion through electrification is key. Coordination across the TSOs with DSOs and market parties and customers is a fundamental part of this flagship. Sector coupling and integration across sectors is vital with the enabling of digital technologies, enabling flexibility and optimization of the infrastructures. Of course, we expect high volumes of transport of RES throughout Europe, and therefore a key part of our roadmap is to ensure the system can accommodate the high RES penetration. Finally, in my last slide, I'd just like to explain very much ENTSO-E's first position paper on electromobility, which was published in April. I'd like to thank all the colleagues in ENTSO-E who developed this paper. It's a very crucial paper for the industry. We ourselves as TSOs wish to play our part. We would like to ensure that we build for now in order to avoid a retrofitting for the future. In this e-mobility paper, we talk about the crucial building blocks of the future energy system, including the accommodation of new load and new load profiles, with of course flexibility resources for balancing, which is necessary given the nature of the RES integration. For TSOs, they are a key actor, a key player in the planning and the management of the whole energy system, and of course electro vehicles impact those scenarios. We are right now accommodating those scenarios within our TYNDP and planning and operating them across the TSO businesses. EV charging profiles, of course, can be optimized, both for the users, but also for the whole system, and ensuring smart charging solutions are introduced. Bidirectionality, vehicle to grid, can provide particularly valuable ancillary services, and therefore our focus in the next years is in obtaining those services. Key amongst them would be the demand response, fast frequency control, and ramping services from these solutions. Finally, I just want to make an overall remark that ENTSO-E and the TSOs provide a very key contribution to the debate, and we want to be part of the solution of the energy system as a whole, both on a technical level and a connectivity level, and ensuring smart charging solutions and regulations should be adopted in a timely fashion. Thank you for your attention and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Sonia. And actually, this set very nicely the scene for our next presentation, which is about the ENTSO-E position paper on the electric vehicles. And I give the floor to you now, Antonio.
Thank you very much and welcome everybody. I will just follow and go in deeper detail of our Secretary General Sonia just told you. We can go to the next page and we can see we have done in ENTSO-E this position paper, which is focused not on all the aspects of electromobility, but especially on the integration in the grids, the impact of the grid. You can see here how it looks like and the reference in the website if you want to have more knowledge of it. So I will give you some flashes in this 15 minutes why TSOs are looking at this, which is a small dispersed load. We had also this question when we started this. Is it a DSO issue or also for TSO? Which are the actors which are new, unknown for us, because we have a decision-making process and mission which is different in the other sectors, but we have to cooperate. And then we have analyzed the challenges, which issues they place. It's especially a peak power issue, and we propose some solution, charging solution, which we think can be either win-win or lose-lose. This, if we don't do anything, option 0 is not a real option. And then some key messages, the most important of which is to start smart since the beginning. We can go on next page. So in the next page, some of these messages were already shown by Sonia. Actually, this charging infrastructure is the physical and also cyber interface between the transport sector, but also urban planning, at least for the stations, for the charging points, which will be in urban areas, and the power sector. So even if most of the connection will be with the distribution network, when we go to tens or even hundreds of millions of vehicles, this automatically escalates the issue at energy system level, and TSO are there also as a system operator. So as is the topic of this workshop today, for sure, e-mobility is one of the building blocks, a crucial one. But for us, from the power grid point of view, this is a new load in terms of electrification, but especially a different load profile because it's changing the profile more than the amount of total load. So this impacts directly when we have to make scenarios in the system planning process and then the follow-up of grid planning. And then, of course, this has been mentioned already, we are particularly interested in the new flexibility resource which these batteries will represent in terms of possibilities to optimize this load profile with smart charging. But even more, if we have bidirectionally vehicle to grid, we can have very enhanced ancillary services, also considering that the batteries being electrochemical batteries being very fast in response, they can give a very fast demand response, which is one of the most precious grid services, especially for the frequency control and the ramping, which are becoming some of the most challenging issues for operating the grid. So we see that they will come quickly. In some countries, they have already become mainstream. In the countries and in the areas where they haven't so far, we think that one main reason is this charging infrastructure, which is somehow the missing link, because vehicles are there, batteries are there. The principle, we all agree that smart charging is a good thing. We need to deploy a suitable charging infrastructure. So TSOs, to answer the initial question, is there with different roles. So we have to operate the grid, but we have also to plan the whole system, and we are the ones to buy the flexibility services. So we are also market facilitator. We think time for action is now, to avoid the need of retrofitting and to start initially since the beginning with the smart charging. We can go to next page. Thank you. So we have focalized only on the electric vehicles which have a direct impact to the grid, which are connected to power grids. So, for example, not hybrid vehicles which do not charge, and not fuel cell-based vehicles, because they don't have a direct interaction. They may have a more general interaction, because if they need hydrogen or other green fuels, they can be impacting the system, but not directly the electric grid. So, and especially the static charging systems, we can see in the next slide which kind of charging system we particularly focus. And also there will be other forms. Now we have analyzed only road transport, but there can be other forms of transport, for example, electrification of ports with inductive type charges can also give in the future other possibilities. So a first conclusion of our analysis, as you see here, there are many actors. It's a very wide ecosystem actually, because there is the power system, the transport system, the battery, the car battery manufacturers, but then there will be private charging operators, and all the aggregators and the actors which provide the ancillary and balancing services to the grid. So in the next page, we see this wide ecosystem. It means a lot of interactions, both in terms of energy exchanges and then also data exchanges, because you have to arrange contractually, and you have to have the payment, the settlement, the measurement, plus all the new services which will be there, have been already mentioned by the EC officers. And this is the occasion to make even more connected, more digital the cars. For example, if you need to know, if you're driving electric car, where will you find the next charging point, but also which kind of charger is there, is slow, fast, if there is a queue to enter there. So, and then you can invest a lot of other services there. So the message here is we have to cooperate with these stakeholders which are new for the electricity sector, but this is the whole idea of sector coupling. And it's not only transport, because it's also the urban planning. If we have urban cities where we have to put a new, very diffused, very dispersed grid. We can go in the next point, next page. In any case, the consumer has to be in the center of this wide ecosystem. If we follow these arrows here, it's a sort of storyline. User, first of all, is not only the car driver, can be the fleet manager or owner, but somebody is the person who decides where, how, and when to charge his vehicles. So he has needs, he has expectation, not only about price, of course, this is the main point, but also the quality of the charging service and the extra services we can give. So one main point to solve is which are the conditions for which a user decides to let somebody else control the charge of his battery. Because it has to be, if we go for slow charging and so long-term parking, it has to be arranged in such a way that for a certain number of hours he can give the car, and he might find it not charged at the best point in time when he needs. So this is something that has to be solved. It is shared control on battery state of charge. Then with this new kind of services, both for the driver and both for the vehicle, we have to conclude that the user perspective will always remain pivot, and we have to find the so-called win-win solution. We can go on. Thank you for moving the slide. So we analyzed which are the charging technologies, the state-of-the-art and promising ones. There are many of them, but we focalize for our impact on grid on the ones which are most probably being used in the short term, which is there, as you see with this red circle. Those who can stay connected for a longer time to the grid. Could also be some of the fast charging, as long as the driver is allowing a shared control of the charging process. So this will mean dispersed mostly in home, offices, recreational places, all places where people will park for longer time. So we more or less are less interested now in the hyperchargers, which will be needed anyway for fast charging when you are on the move. Next slide, thank you. What we see. So it's we have checked many literature studies. There is a general consensus that the electric vehicles will not be such a challenge from the energy point of view, from adequacy of generation, adequacy, the capacity of generating energy. As you see here, even in the most challenging scenarios, few percentage of increase of total load is projected in this sense, even if considering all type of charges or type of vehicles. But they can stress for contemporaneity reason local and regional grids as a peak load, and even the whole system. We can see in the next slide. So we have identified that it is not, this is again from one ELIA study, which was parallel and was then included in our ENTSO-E. It's not really an energy issue. The problem is, if you see on the right side, if you compare with the residual load and not the total load curve, this it's increasing, potentially increasing something which is already a challenge for TSOs, for grid operators in general, increasing the ramp and the evening peak. So it might, if we don't to go to at least a minimal smart charging, we risk to have to do reinforcement to the grids only for peak reason. We can go to the next page, thank you. So as you see on the left bottom, at least the smart charging alone, which is a way to shift power, the power withdrawal at most suitable times. Suitable times is known only by the system operator because it has the general view of excess or deficit of energy. And this can be also unpredictable because of the variable renewables, which can have an unpredictable and in real-time terms profile. And so if we have this shared control, the charging can smooth all the peaks, can fill up the valleys, because we have also the opposite issue of excess production, which could be curtailed, and we want to avoid this. And in the bottom right, you see, if we go for vehicle to grid, which is a more advanced bidirectional exchange, you really use all these batteries, which are like the stationary batteries. They are parked, they are like stationary batteries, and millions of them equates the grid utility kind of storage, which some TSO and the DSO are already going to use. And in this, the calculation I've shown that you can, with vehicle to grid, you can not only smooth the peaks of the vehicles themselves, but also reshaping the effect of the whole residual load. So they can be extra beneficial, not only to solve the problem they create, but also to solve the problem of the rest of residual load. Can go to the next one. Thank you. So we have in the paper analyzed, and here is briefly graphically represented, which are the opportunities. We have seen the challenges, but there are a lot of opportunities by the proper charging management, starting from up, reshaping the power load curve, but also providing auxiliary services, and this is a transmission grid level. Management of grid congestion, because this is a way instead of redispatching, which is costly. And distribution grids are more or less the same, especially for avoiding overloads and so reinforcement. They, depending on the charger type, they can also give voltage control. They can also act on the reactive power side. Reduction of overgeneration of renewables, and then a full area opens up. We just mentioned, because it's not our direct analysis of behind the meter services, because when you have prosumers and smart services in the house, you can use the car battery parked there as a battery. Don't have to buy another battery if you have also some solar production. So the battery is already paid when you buy the car, and only small operational costs are added for its use and more continuous charge and discharge. These opportunities can be stacked by the single operator, by the user, in terms of economic value. So not only a discount or grasping low cost electricity price to charge when it is more cheap, but also having other revenue streams. In the next one, thank you. So you can categorize charging solutions in different under different criteria, using a criteria which is minimizing the grid impact, or actually the negative impact, and maximizing the possible benefit. We propose this taxonomy, where one axis is about the access, being it private or public, and the other axis is about the parking needs. Actually, we think coupling parking and charging is the main issue here. This is totally paradigm shift. With fossil fuel cars, we park on the move. We charge on the move. With electric cars, we have to charge mostly not on the move. So there are several categories of use cases, which we have put here with some colors, because some are more suitable of others for providing grid services. But we think that all of these, and maybe also new ones, will be deployed. So the grid supporting ones have to be particularly enhanced. And if you click again, there are some concepts. Thank you. So there are different charging solutions, so different use cases. Always we have to think that the driver will not give up easily the availability of his car. He doesn't want to risk finding it without charge if he needs suddenly. So smart ways, even in smart charging, has to be done in a smart way. For sure, price signals will be there, but this is not enough. We have to give an experience, comfortable and innovative services. And we have to consider that each driver will have multiple charging options. So it can typically charge at house, at office, in the supermarket, on the highway, and this has to be taken into consideration when offering services. We go to the I think last slide about key messages. This is a short list of key messages. It's a bit of a recap. We have a wider ecosystem. We have to cooperate with them also at then regulation and legislation level. We have to promote the integrated planning. So charging infrastructure will be planned also with the urban planning, buildings constructors. And we heartily recommend that smart charging and vehicle to grid must be even as a default through win-win solutions. Even this cannot be made mandatory, but should be highly prioritized. We need to follow up with market design and rules with cost-reflective tariffs. Also, considering that if you avoid grid reinforcement, this has to be recognized in the tariff. And then there are a lot of enablers, which I think will be also followed up in the next intervention about standards, interoperability, not only in a country but in Europe. And then the whole issue about data access, management, and digital services. And I stop here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Antonio. I should have said in the beginning that actually Antonio and the working group he's leading within ENTSO-E was the driving force behind this position paper. So next up to the work of the Association of Internet of Things. Francois, the floor is yours to present the recently published position paper.
Thank you. Are you hearing me well?
Yes, it's perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you for the invitation. So I'm Francois Fischer. I'm the chairman of the Smart Mobility Working Group in IoTI. Next slide, please. Next. Fine. The Smart Mobility Working Group is looking at smart usage of IoT in the context of mobility. We have defined and identified two main objectives for the group. One objective is user experience. In terms of smart mobility, the most important is not really the material or what and how we use the services, but how the user can be confident and satisfied by services. So there we have to understand the value chain and the different sectors involved for user experience. So mobility is one aspect, but if you look at the journey, you see smart homes, smart mobility, smart cities, smart transport, and smart building. So the center point of the smart life is definitely the smartphone. So it's very important to take into account apps and user experience together with apps. We identify also the charging as an important topic together also with the vehicle interface, sorry, the human-machine interface. On the other end, another aspect which is important to provide smart mobility services is the IT platform to operate the services. And there we identify a need to have trusted neutral platform for the operation of the service, something like DLT. So this is also according to the vision of the European Union, the data governance to get more data across different sectors, across member states, but also Gaia-X with the need to develop open platform. Next slide, please. Next. We have, thanks to DGConnect, consider providing a paper. So we have published a paper about EV charging use cases. The basis of the paper is also a vision shared by a Shell company with 4 different categories of for these use cases: the grid operators, the charging together with other business, retail, or other mobility operation like fleet. The on-the-go charging, which is something very similar to petrol station now, and charging at home, work, or public places. Next slide. In the first category, the TSO use case is particularly interesting. So here I selected the Equigi model, which is very well presented. So you see on one side the challenge of the energy transition with difficulties of peak time for producing energy. On the other hand, there is a new category of consumers. So the consumers have new items which are consuming significant amount of energy, like electrical vehicle, but also can provide themselves energy with solar panel, and the electrical vehicle can be also used to compensate the peak time. So that's why EcoGi speak about crowd balancing. They support the cooperation across the value chain. So it's not about energy producer or other silos, but a full value chain. The need to use also the DLT technology to get actors collaborating easily to balance supply and demand, and also to promote agreement for bidirectional charging, so the V2G model. Next slide, please. The second category is about fleet charging. There I provided the example of one of our new partner, Brainbox. Brainbox is the first and the top operator of car sharing electrical vehicle in Greece. Beyond the network of charging point, easy charging operation is also spending together with user experience on application. So it is critical, for instance, for the user to easily book and pay services, compare tariff, and link also with in-vehicle navigation, the information about car autonomous status in order to get charging on time if you have longer range needs. Next slide. The third category is on-the-go charging, to be compared actually with today petrol stations. I gave the model of total mobility. It's also interesting because it seems they have been co-funded by the European Union by a CEF project. It's very similar in terms of user needs as the category 2, so accessing a charging point. Beyond this, the charging points are more multifunction, so you have an inclusion of different type of charger, AC or DC charging. Here, specifically, there is a need to get a fast charging, compared to the category 2, where a vehicle can stay eventually longer for going to shopping. On-the-go charging, you expect to be as close as possible to fueling time of a petrol vehicle. So that's a very important aspect. And of course, the user experience with the appropriate smartphone application is very important. How to find the charging point, to compare prices, and to link also to the journey in the vehicle in case you need a long range journey. Next slide, please. So the last category is charging at home, work, or public places. In terms of application, this is of course similar to other category. There it's about incentive. There is a need to develop charging point for citizens who do not have a parking place, who have no driveway and need to load their vehicle on the public road. Here, there is also a very important point to be taken into account is the evolution of electrical vehicle and in particular battery. So it is expected until 2030 that a new battery will enable charging 500 miles range within less than 30 minutes. So it's very important not to explode this charging point if at a certain point of time the on-the-go charging will be sufficient, like petrol vehicle today. So, but currently it is needed to develop a new charging point for public places. Next slide, please. Next. So the IoTi Electromobility Task Force has been started at the end of 2020. Our focus is to launch the operation of a new charging point with DLT platform. So to deploy strategically located EV charging station, not being capable to be deployed easily by a group like Total, but if there are local authority developing charging points, private, retail shops, etc., that we can make this charging point operationally available for every user through a DLT platform. Next slide, please. Decentralized EV charging is a critical point. I think it has been already presented and mentioned in a mini presentation before. So first of all, blockchain technology is necessary because we need transparency and trust. We need any local provider to easily make his charging point discovered by all possible applications used by users on their smartphone, for instance. And this charging point, when there is a need of fees to be collected easily as well. So for this, the decentralized blockchain platform is the best solution. The need of interoperability is very important as well, so like with OCPP protocol. Next slide, please. Also, these applications need to enable change of habits. So we know the issue of balancing supply and demand of energy with e-vehicle. With application, rewarding system could be used to allow balance and people charging vehicle in outside the peak time, for instance. And also this application need to promote a smart contract and use the standard OCPP protocol. Next slide. So what is the IoTi value proposal for enabling EU-wide deployment of charging point? First, addressing the main challenge. All the stakeholders and business partners are not visible across Europe, meaning they are not visible among themselves because there are a lot of opportunity with local authority or local businesses to deploy charging point. There is no need to have a central organization or big organization to manage this business. There is also a need of a distributed marketplace, so no centralized operational platform. So that's the main challenges we wanted to address. And that's why we created the electromobility task force. And we have already an existing and validated distributed DLT-based marketplace or technology for trading and executing electromobility services. So we are ready to deploy services thanks to a new project which has been completed last year named NEMO. So the platform is a DLT platform which is ready and has been validated with concrete services. With this platform, we use also common data models, so it's very easy to deploy new services, not only charging point. The development environment for these electromobility services is using semantic search techniques, so it's very easy to deploy, develop, and publish the services on to be discovered by any application, user application. We have already a reference network of 8 blockchain nodes for starting to operate services. IoTi is a non-for-profit organization, so it's an open organization. So we are ready to support and welcome public or private members to include their service on the platform and also support further development of new services. So all actors are welcome to join the task force, either supply or demand side actors. Thank you.
Thank you, Francois, for this presentation. If I remember well, I think all of our speakers at one point mentioned the consumers and the importance of the consumers. So it's best to give them the floor. The European Consumer Organization BEUC is represented today by Robin Loos. We are running a little bit late, Robin, so you have 10 minutes sharp. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to be very short because, as you mentioned, many people already integrated the consumer perspective in their presentation. You can go already to the next slide. Yes, this one. So thank you for the invitation. I'll just quickly inform you about what BEUC is and how I ended up with all these questions that you see on the screen. So we are gathering consumer association throughout Europe. We have 45 members, and the sustainable mobility aspect has been very important for the last few years now. And obviously charging from a consumer perspective is very important. And the question you see here on the screen is some questions our members have from real consumers throughout Europe. So looking at these questions, you can group them in several blocks of issues that exist today. The first being the information. I think Rolf mentioned it very well in the beginning of his presentation. It's all about I need to know. I need to know what my vehicle is capable of. I need to know what is actually that I'm buying when I'm buying an electric vehicle. I need to know the battery capacity that I have, the charging that it can accept. Those are very basic questions, but if you look at the early stage we are in at the moment, when it comes to developing EVs in Europe, many consumers still don't know the technicalities and the technical aspects of vehicles, which is completely different than from the conventional engine. So that's the first block of information, let's say. The second block is mostly about convenience and the quality of services that you get. When I talk about convenience, probably several aspects. The first one being, how do I charge? And am I able to see the price? Am I able to charge with my credit or bank card if I'm on the public station? What is really the cost? And if I charge at home, do I have the right electricity contract? Am I able to benefit from the off-peak tariffs? When you talk about smart charging, it's very interesting per se, but in many countries in Europe for the moment, you don't have such off-peak tariffs that exist. Smart charging is still a dream for many, or still very unknown for others. So there's also the question, very basic question of how will I pay this, be it at home or on the street. A second block is more about the transparency and the cost themselves. I also mentioned it right now, but it's also an issue that many consumers have. I'll take again the example of public charging. You can see on the streets of Brussels for the moment that there are many new charging stations, and they proudly say that they accept more than 300 charging cards to use these charging stations. Well, if you tell me as a random consumer that you can use 300 different cards, well, I don't know what it means because I usually use my credit or bank card, and if I want to benefit from charging at the same price than if I had a contract with an e-mobility service provider, for example, then maybe I got screwed somehow. And the last aspect is about data and the digital skills. The Commission also clearly mentioned this in its presentation. People need to be informed, but people need to change their behavior and their mindset. Charging an EV is a completely new experience for many, and you can't blame all consumers for thinking that it should be as easy as refueling their petrol car. So these are basic questions, and you can go to the next slides of questions that I have. These are basic questions, but we are still at the very early steps. So if you want to enable smart charging and make sure people understand it, then you have lots of issues about information, convenience, price, transparency, and digital skills to solve. I'll maybe insist a bit more on the data aspect and the safeguards that are in place for the moment. It's true that we need to make sure that data is shared, is available between businesses, between TSO, DSO, electricity providers. This is very important, but from a consumer's perspective, and that's the same thing for almost all aspects of our life now. It's all about digital, but going 100% digital should also leave no one behind in this aspect. And for those who know or want to go digital, consumers want to keep control of their data. They want to know who has access to them. They want to make sure that they can also have security provision that no one's going to hack their car. I mean, we've seen the example with some Tesla for the moment. So those are real issues for consumers. I'm looking at the questions if I forgot something, but I think I've covered almost everything here. And yeah, on the smart charging side, to go a bit more into the detail, we can the first information we get is that the savings that consumers can make from smart charging can be relatively small for the moment. Mainly because the off-peak tarification doesn't exist, or the ability to smart charge is quite limited for the moment, but also because the question is, what if I want to charge my car at a very specific moment and I want it to be charged? It has been raised as well. I want it to be charged in 2 hours, and I want to make sure that I don't pay extra fees because I charge at 6 p.m. at night, because I need my car at 8 and I need it to be charged. Those are also questions of convenience for consumers. And also the capacity of a battery. You mentioned, so I forgot, someone mentioned the plug-in hybrids. Well, enabling smart charging with plug-in hybrids is also completely different, because the very small batteries they have can be quite can have limited resources to support the household consumption. You can go to the next slide, which is already my final slide. And to give you a bit of hint of what we're doing and how we intend to proceed in this very changing regulatory framework that we see at the moment. We have just published a new study on the total cost of ownership of electric vehicles, showing the interest and the financial benefits of electric vehicles for consumers. So this is already something that we hope will help reinforce the CO2 standards for cars, provide more electric vehicles on the ground, because should we want to enable smart charging at V2G, we need to reach a scale that is big enough to provide savings for consumers, flexibility for the grid. So we are very much in favor of this arrival of new electric vehicles on the market. Something that should be of interest for you in this study, we compared a consumer that has access to off-peak tarification, if he charges at home, if he charges on the highway, where it costs a bit higher. Showing that even though someone charges, for example, a commuter charge on the highway every time he goes to work, the benefits of an electric vehicle is still there. Obviously, it's a game changer for many if you have managed to charge at home, but it's not the case for everyone. People will still have to rely on the streets. Doesn't mean they cannot benefit from smart charging, but there's also a question there to have the right contract to be able to benefit from smart charging off-peak tarification if you charge on a regular charging station. If you have it in front of your house because you asked for it, there should be a way for them to benefit these off-peak tariffs. Obviously, CO2 standards for car are the main tools to promote these electric cars. I mentioned it. And on the AFID regulation, which you all know, I'm sure, there's also quite some aspect that I mentioned already, notably on ad hoc payment, which shouldn't be of detriment to consumers if they choose that method. The convenience of charging, the transparency of tariffs. We see for the moment it's quite a jungle, to be completely honest with you, on the public charging side, and there's much more to be done to make sure that people know what they're going to pay in advance, during, and after the charge. And all I said today is probably can probably be solved partly or greatly in the revision of the car labeling directive. I can already tell you it's a missing piece from the Fit for 55 package coming up in July. The car labeling directive was published in 1999. It's 21 years old, almost 22 years old now, and it does not provide the accurate information for consumers on the real fuel consumption, the electricity, the consumption, the driving range of an electric vehicles. 20 years ago, there were no electric vehicles, so it's quite plain simple. And this car labeling directive should be revised very soon to give consumers at the dealership the right information about what they're buying and how they're going to use it. And with this, I'm done for my presentation. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ruben, for bringing this approach to the table as well. I think many of your questions from the slides could be brought directly forward to the panel discussions, which are coming up after the break. So let's have a 15 minutes break, and we'll see you back at 11:35. Welcome back after this short break. I hope this 15 minutes was enough for all of you to digest a little bit all the information we shared with you in the first half of this event. And now we move to the second half of this event, where we have two panel discussion. And for the first one, I give the floor to Norela Constantinescu, the head of innovation section in ENTSO-E, to introduce the panelist.
Thank you very much, Laurent. I hope that we can engage more also with the audience, because otherwise it's only one-way communication in this webinar. So please do not forget the Slido, which is actually easier to use if you have questions or reactions. And with this, I would like to welcome on this panel discussion Ercole Di Luca, so the head of electrical system development at Areti, which is a DSO in Rome. If you can go back to the previous slide, thank you. Then we will have with us Peter van Balen, who is product manager ELIA, so the TSO in Belgium. Then we will have Laurent Schmidt, chair of digital task force Smarten. Andre Gomez, mobility area coordinator in SONAE, and then which will give us more the perspective of other sectors than electricity. And in the end, we will have Harald Parthuber, system manager at Texas Instruments, which will bring us more the technology perspective. So with this, I will like to move forward and try to do a little bit of summary of the discussion before, and then I will give the word to first to Ercole. So Carlotta, if we can go to the next slide. Next. Okay. So we were pleased actually to hear about these two position papers developed by ENTSO-E, the transmission system operators, and by IOETI, looking more at the digital perspectives. But we have also heard the perspective of the European Commission, DGConnect through Rolf, and DG Energy through Mark, as well as actually the customer perspective, because we are here for the consumers as well, and we have to take this perspective when we do our developments, while ensuring the overall benefits for the energy, transport, and entire economy. So of course, we looked at the customer benefits, driving ranges. We have heard Robin saying that they want to have actually convenience. They also want to look at the optimal charging costs. And this can take different perspective. But of course, we have heard on the other hand the statements of Antonio Iliceto mentioning the challenge which we can have on the grid. So the reduction of the stress, of course, opportunities, unlock the flexibility which can be provided by the batteries, and more RES integration. We also identified, I think, two particular solutions from our side, so smart charging and vehicle to grid from both associations, with actually different perspectives, so physical connection, but also data exchange, economic interactions, and of course deeper integration of planning and operation activities of the two sectors. We have heard as well the need to act now, because the deployment of e-mobility is going to take place between 2020 and 2030 at a quite high speed. And of course, for the TSOs and DSOs, at least for the grid operators, this is a challenge due to our quite long lead times. So if I can summarize in one word, so we were trying to answer a little bit the question what when we discuss about e-mobility and the integration of the two sectors. Now this panel, if we go to the next slide, we would like to hear a little bit why, so opportunities, stacking them, benefits, but also challenges, how, ecosystem and cooperation, if we need real-time control and data interoperability, so all these words we have heard before, markets, and where the charging use cases, which I think it was quite nicely brought by IoTI as well as by ENTSO-E, slow, fast, ultra fast, home, in the office, in the streets, cities, but also highways, for example, if we go to also the developments for electromobility related to heavy duty vehicles and so on. So with this summary, I move to the first panelist, Ercole Di Luca. So you are the DSO in Rome, and I think you would like to tell us and try to answer to the question why this is an opportunity, but can also be a challenge if we do not move towards maybe these solutions we mentioned before, smart charging and vehicle to grids.
Definitely yes. Thank you very much, Norella, for your invitation. Thanks to you, to ENTSO-E and to IoT for this opportunity. If we can see the only slide I have, yes, thank you very much. This very short speech, I want mainly confirm all the position stated by ENTSO-E and illustrated by Antonio. Also for DSO point of view, so that we can say for the whole electrical system, EV charging is not a problem of energy, it's a problem of capacity. And it's very important to confirm this also from a DSO point of view, because the solution, as all of us know, must be taken all together. We have to find solution in such a way, coordinating each other, mainly DSO and DSO, of course, the system operator, and then all the other stakeholders together with us. And we must have one view, and we must have one objective to pursue together. Of course, I also want to stress some small differences in needs between DSO and TSO regarding EV charging capacity management, and that's very important, again, to work it together. As you can see, I'm showing here the penetration of the electromobility in Italy. We are going to have around 6 million electrical vehicles 2030 and around 8 million of electrical vehicles at 2040. What is very important to say is that 20% of those numbers will be in the only area of Rome. Rome will have close to 1 million electrical vehicles at 2030 and 1.3 at 2040. And this is something very important to say, because it will lead, I showed here the distribution of the typics of the charging stations we have. We foresee at 2030 to have 370,000 charging stations in private sector. It means at the home of people. And take into account an average power of 4 kilowatt, we're going to have a total installed power of 1.5 gigawatt. Instead, on public side, on the street, we'll have 10,000 of charging station at an average of 33 kilowatt for a total installed power of 0.3 gigawatt. So as you can see, the impact of the residential EV charging is higher and higher than in the public one. And if you look at the total amount of installed power that we foresee at 2030, is 1.8 gigawatt. Last forecast we are going to have, it seems that this number will be bigger again but still, to be conservative, we will have 1.8 gigawatt of additional installed power in Rome. And if you think that at this moment the peak capacity that we have in Rome is around 2.1 gigawatt in the month of July, if we go for calculation about the contemporaneity of the loading and so on, we could foresee that in some moments of the year and some specific hours of the day, we could have an increase from the 30 to the 60% of the capacity need of the distribution with the Rome. Of course, this is not sustainable from an economical point of view, but also for another reason. As you know, Rome is a huge monument. grid reinforcement or any kind of work to be done in Rome is extremely difficult. So that's why we say that Rome is one of the, let's say, most important battlefield of the energy transition in Europe. And we as a REDI feel the responsibility to manage this process and to change, as you said, Norella, this challenge in an opportunity. Why an opportunity? Because this huge amount of flexibility, because EV means flexibility for all of us, can be put at service of the world system, can put at service of TSO, can be put at services of aggregators and customers to fix a lot of problems, not only for the distribution grid, but mainly for the national transmission grid of Rome. That's why REDI, as you know, is very active at European level with innovation projects regarding flexibility, regarding also the regulation on that. Look at the harmonized electricity market role model that we lead. We are happy to do that together with ENTSO-E and other DSOs, and that's why we want to strongly support ENTSO-E in this EV charging, smart charging and vehicle to grid strategy, because we see the only way working together to fix it and to transform it in a common opportunity. Last point. For TSOs, very last point, yes. For TSOs, you know, the hours where you need flexibility for the from electrical vehicle can be a little bit different from the hours that are needed from DSO. For example, we need to reduce the load during the middle of the day and increase in the other. So that's why we have to work together and find the solution, the best solution, especially using storage and vehicle to grid to fix it. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much, Ercole, for bringing this perspective of the city of Rome and the constraints which are there, and this challenge you see immediately coming in the next 10 years. You mentioned at the end the flexibility, and then I go directly to Peter Van Balen, so the TSO, to see actually how you see this cooperation with the DSOs, and what is your experience from flexibility perspective activation. So because I know that you have projects around this issue.
Yes. Hi everybody. Thank you. So for the how, maybe next slide. At first slide. So Elia Group, we identified basically 3 enablers to overcome, let's say, the existing barriers for EV uptake, and to be able to fully unlock really the value streams and the potential of electrical vehicles. We must work on, of course, the physical and the digital infrastructure, like for instance the charging infrastructure, etc. But also then this open data access and these updated market rules. Now, having these 3 enablers in place would for us really solve the how and how to fully unlock this EV uptake. Now, to further frame and Elia put in place basically together with the DSOs an ecosystem to create, let's say, new consumer-centric services of tomorrow, not only around the EV driver. EV driver is a very important one, of course, but also for the end consumer in general with heat pumps, etc. So on the next slide, when you take a look at the EV part, we have one of the key project basically that is part of this larger ecosystem is called Flexity. In a nutshell, Flexity is a pilot project in which residential flexibility coming from heat pumps, electrical vehicles, boilers, etc. is put to the test. And when we look more closely to the part of the electrical vehicles, we find that group Jetlix, Engie, and then Fluvius and Elia, who are investigating the potential of these EV drivers. And basically what we have is that we have a large pool of flexible EV drivers, and we look at the value stacking potential by optimizing these charging process. So basically, we look at a day-night optimization that induces direct savings for the end consumer. We take a look at, can we optimize it in function of wholesale prices? And then thirdly, of course, where we as Elia are actively involved in, is also to take a look at the participation in the AFR market, so in our balancing market, and to investigate what is the potential, is it technically feasible for these EVs to valorize their flexibility in the balancing market, and how should our let's say market design and for instance very specific metering requirements, pre-qualification procedures, how do these need to be updated in order that these electrical vehicles can fully flourish in the AFR market. So when Flexity 1.0, let's say, started somewhere end of 2019, beginning of 2020, really focused on small group, friends, family, colleague to test the technical feasibility. Now we are going towards, let's say, a Flexity 2.0, where we are upscaling our services to the wider public. Are developing a pool that is continuously increasing, where we use where the Jetlix technologies, for instance, is used, and that steers the electrical vehicles via the back end of the manufacturers, and where we just will also take a closer look to build this value proposition and to see how our current AFR and balancing market, I would almost say in general, needs to evolve to also capture this increasing amount of flexibility that will be available tomorrow. So that's in a nutshell a little bit on how we identified enablers, how we build together and co-create together with the market on solutions to bring this flexibility directly to the market.
Thank you, Peter, for this for trying to answer to how questions. So at least from transmission system operator point of view, but also linking to the other sector. Now I would like to go. And I might come personally to you back with a question which was raised by Robin. So which is the benefit for the customer there? So think maybe meanwhile, if I come back to you, Laurent, I go now to you. So more the aggregator perspective. Probably you will also try to answer to the question how, and then what is needed maybe to arrive there.
Yeah, thank you, Norela. I hope you can hear me. And I'm going to introduce basically some work which is ongoing through the Smart 10 Association on both sides. One side is on the electrical vehicle integration, and where we produced also a report recently, as well as the basically thinking on what is needed from a digital standpoint to enable these services of DER moving forward. If we go to the first slide, I think what we see is the regulatory framework is rather complex in Europe, and it's very important, we think, to act on various layers of the framework. So there is really three pillars which are important: the electricity market design, the AFID, and the new building policy to integrate e-mobility. If we go to the next slide. Starting point is really the market design, and here we think there is really some interesting possibility to work through the context of the framework for demand side flexibility. We think that it is still not enough. What is currently in the network codes to enable distributed energy resource participation, and it is very important to refine some of the principle of enrolling active customer. Basically incentive provided by system operator, and particularly also in terms of definition of who owns the associated EV infrastructure. So here I would say it's a regulatory environment. There is a space to move this forward, and we hope it's going to be moved rather quickly now. because this is absolutely essential to allow the revenue stacking, as what we were discussing before. If we go to the next slide, we also have been very active onto the AFID. So the AFID is important when it comes to the rollout of smart charging into the street, and basically to really enable open, secure, and easy accessible infrastructure from the vehicle standpoint. We think we should not mandate too strongly standards, but providing further guideline principle. And here, one of the complex elements is we see the OCCP coming from one side onto the charging infrastructure. We see a lot of things happening in the environment of the grids on SIM, IEC environment. We see demand response coming also potentially with OpenADR. So the question is, how can we simplify and make it easy to use for a user of basically of a building, or even for residential homeowner? So what is the typical interface required here? And we think ideally putting the requirement of smart charging into the public tender is important. We very much appreciate the work which we have done on ENTSO-E, going in insisting on the speed required to roll out this new infrastructure, future-proof infrastructure on one hand, and on the other hand, on the keen interest of V2G, which is one of the elements of the future-proof infrastructure. And last but not least, and we think next slide, there is not enough emphasis for the moment onto that one, because we should keep in mind that EV are charged 70 to 80% when they are parked at home. So we should not forget the home and building charging for either the professional charging or the residential charging. And we really think we should further mandate smart charger into residential and home building, and discuss how to connect smart chargers with the building energy management. And here I would like to particularly point out the residential environment, where we see in the same time coming heat pump, EV, photovoltaics, and photovoltaics in a new self-consumption model. And so here, we really need to be further clear on how to integrate all these DR together at a residential level, enable V2G, and interact, I would say, backward with the grid, balancing EFR and other revenue opportunities.
Thank you, Laurent, for giving this perspective more of the prosumer, and for actually underlying the need of building this common, or at least interoperable and interconnected architectures between the electricity energy management systems and also smart charging. I would like to go now to Andre Gomez, so to give more the perspective of other type of operator.
Hi everyone, thank you for the invitation. Here with me are Amandio Ferreira, it's ID coordinator of the company too. Sona EMC is the leading food retailer in Portugal, with more than 300 stores, mostly super and hypermarkets. As we already announced, Sona subscribed the Paris Agreement target, but anticipated this carbon neutrality target 10 years, from 2050 to 2040. This is a very ambitious target, we know that, forced us to think in new approach and new solutions, not only for Sona, but all value chain, clients, suppliers, and collaborators. I can give a few examples regarding mobility. Sona started to implement back in 2019 solutions to reduce daily commuting to work its employees. We also create specific parking lots for bikes to incentivize any healthy and decarbonized mobility. In 2017, we start electrification process of our fleet. Sona decided to promote electric mobility through an efficient and impactful service to our customer, Continent Plug and Charge. It is in the DNA of Sona a very strong commitment to its clients, always willing to provide them competitive and affordable goods and services. Continent Plug and Charge follows the same principle. Continent Plug and Charge has three main pillars: user-centric solution, compatible with carbon neutrality targets, and optimize existing infrastructure. Detailing a bit more, user-centric solution because clients' approach, clients' aspiration and convenience is in the center of the service. It increases access to EV charging station, has simple and clear tariff schemes, very affordable and competitive charging, and promotes integration with other service, Continent Loyalty Card Program. Compatible with carbon neutrality targets, because EVs are zero emissions, of course. More importantly, EV charge are often integrated with solar PV, local PV, meaning we are talking about renewable powered mobility, carbon-free mobility. In terms of infrastructure, given Sona EMC presence along the national territory, typical with large parking areas associated to its stores, we are taking advantage of existing infrastructures, therefore avoiding cost of dedicated infrastructures. It means a more competitive service to our customers. We believe private EV charging networks are essential to complement public charge networks, making EV charging stations widely accessible. We believe Sona EMC can help foster electric mobility and actively contribute to the transition to a new mobility paradigm.
Thank you, Andre, for these insights from your side. So moving outside the home, I will go now, and the example in Portugal, I will go now to Harald Partuber. So please shed the light on how, from technology point of view, and also the new developments may be related to DC, I think, because this is going to be a little bit the future for electromobility as well.
Absolutely, Norela. Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. So in my little presentation, I will try to summarize how we see at TI the EV charging station market evolving from a topology perspective and also from a semiconductor technology perspective. Next slide, please. Oops, yeah, that one. So today's EV charging stations are divided into AC and DC. And depending on the use case, if it is for public use or for home use, the recharging times of the batteries are defined. So what we see in AC charging stations, you can achieve about recharging times between 8 and 17 hours, depending on the onboard charger of the car. The fast DG charging stations for public use, they allow recharge times that go down to 50, maybe 30 minutes. What we see here today from a topology perspective are two-level power converters. They use silicon FET, they use IGBTs, and the passive components are defining the cost and the size of those solutions. And all of the described are unidirectional today. So vehicle to grid is a concern that needs to be addressed in the next generation. So moving forward, there is for sure that need to reduce the charging times, address also higher voltage batteries, which are being deployed by car manufacturers. And as I said, vehicle to grid connection is of a concern that needs to be addressed and taken care of. So let's start with the AC charging station. They will mainly address the faster charging times by using poly or split phase connections. They will continue to stay unidirectional, and from a technology or from a topology perspective, those are the simplest implementation, and they will stay there for quite some time. The charging times might go up or down to 4 to 8 hours in that case. In the DC charging stations, we will see multi-level topologies in the power conversions as a primary architecture. That shift from a two-level converter architecture to a multi-level topology will enable the reduction in size, weight, and cost, and all that at a higher power level. And that results in faster charging times. You need to keep in mind that In multi-level topologies, the switching voltages across the power devices are either half or even lower compared to a two-level inverter. And that will improve overall EMI, makes it easier to implement, and it will make it possible to address EVs with high voltage batteries. We see also a new trend for DC charging stations, which are kind of portable or wall mounted. So they will go up to 22 kilowatts, and they will support short charging times at home or even at public. If we look into these parking lot examples we have seen in the previous presentation. By introducing here bidirectional operation, the ability to connect the car to the grid will be actually possible. And from a technology, semiconductor technology perspective, we will continue to see silicon FETs, but also technologies like gallium arsenide, which are cost efficient in the future. So in summary, we will see new power conversion topologies with bidirectional operation. And that will drive a need for real-time microcontrollers, for next generation high precision signal chain and sensing ICs in the converters. And we will see that high power electronics based on silicon FETs, silicon carbide, and on gallium arsenide, depending on the use case, will be seen. With that, I'm at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harald, for these insights on the move in the technology for actually this connection to the electricity grid and the evolution towards more the power electronics and DC. Of course, this is important, and also the time ranges which make the difference. I will go now to take a question which is on Slido. Which is coming from Dirk Longer, I think I pronounced correctly. The question is, if I may read it, and if Laurent meanwhile can manage also to allow you to speak loud if I don't take all the message. Regarding the smart charges and vehicle to grid, so who is going to pay for this? Because it might be seen that the consumer has to do that. So how do you perceive actually this type of development? So mandate smart charging and vehicle to grid and consumer payments. So if I turn the question first maybe to the grid operators, so to Ercole and Peter.
As you know, Norella, the matter of smart charging and vehicle to grid is a matter of grid services, so balancing services or frequency services or ancillary services, so that when we are going to ask as TSO and DSO to customer to provide services, who is going to pay is us, is the system operator. So that it's an opportunity for the customer, it's an opportunity for aggregator. So customer, we can say, is going to gain money, not to pay money for that.
Okay, thank you. Peter, Peter, so if you have an estimation of how much a customer can gain actually by using or by providing this type of services, so flexibility services.
But what we first see is that when doing the optimizations is that we really work on a value stacking point of view. So first we try to shift the load completely to the night, and then those consumers, of course, that have a day-night tariff have a direct saving on their end bill. There you see that our current estimations are around 20-30 euros a year that you can for an average consumer, let's say. Then when looking at optimizations in function of the wholesale prices, which will in fact thus probably benefit the supplier because he can source energy cheaper, there the benefits are somewhat lower. When looking at AFR participation, I would say also around 30 euros a year. These are current estimations, but it's hard to put exact figures on it. It's dependent on consumer profile, I think. It's also how many mileage does the consumer do? Does he plug in 90% in the time at home, or because typically the optimization exercises are done when plugged in at home, when we have a large time frame to perform the optimization. But also an additional value stream that we are investigating is that as from 2022, a capacity tariff will be introduced in the northern part of Belgium. So then it will also be beneficial for the end consumer to use the electrical car for peak shaving. And there we also see quite the first figures also see that there might be a very interesting opportunity for the end consumer. So I must follow Luca there that indeed I don't think that the end consumer must pay for it. The end consumer can also gain from it. Not only from a financial monetary point of view, but also from a experience point of view. He will be able to actively participate. He will have a better view on his invoice. He will also, these applications that are popping up also allow you to source green energy or have a better view where your energy comes from, at least. So I mean, it's an exercise, I would say.
Thank you, Peter, for actually bringing this value of stacking the benefits. Laurent, from the I don't know, aggregator point of view, as well as Andre from what you can offer from your side as possibility outside the home, and also Harald, for you, if you can sum up a message towards the customers. So first, Laurent, regarding these benefits.
Yes, so I think first of all, the question to vehicle to grid is very interesting. Is we need to really think, where is the car going to be parked the longest time? And there's no point doing vehicle to grid for street charging, for instance, because the car is actually mobilized on a very short period. So we think vehicle to grid is really a question for building for professional business cars, and on one side, and residential. This is really the vehicle to grid part. Now on the revenue stacking, I think what we want is be able to use the traditional either implicit demand response or explicit using aggregator and through aggregators. And what is very important is the consumer should be able to stack all these revenue. And so I think that can go very largely from maximizing his PV self-consumption. We should not forget that one. Doing basically direct, going into direct real-time price. For instance, with my own car, I think I can make around 500 euro saving per year just by going into direct markets, going into XBit flexibility markets, and then going into the AFR and other reserve market, and potentially in the future going into the TSO, DSO congestion management market. So I think if we stack up all these together and potentially doing capacity, we hope we can get up to 1,000 per car and per year overall. I think that's what would start to be very appealing for consumer to be able to participate into all these different kind of services.
Thank you, Laurent. Andre, from your side, shortly, if you would like to add something to the consumer perspective, and then I will come with a question to you, Harald, which was addressed in Slido.
Typical, our clients came to our shops 2 times in the week. In the Continent Plug and Charge hubs combine slow and fast chargers, and we also integrate ours with other service. If the client make 30 euros, buy 30 euros in the store, we offer 30 minutes in the slow charger or 10 minutes in the fast charger. we make that with our loyalty card. The Continent card is the larger loyalty card in Portugal and one the biggest in Europe. We combine the charging with the shop in the store.
Thank you, Andre, for also bringing this additional perspective. Now, Harald, to you regarding the technology and the increase in the power, if I understood well the question. So how the battery technology is going to evolve in order to have this alignment, the possibility to absorb more power, if you have any insights in the development of the batteries for car and higher capacities.
So the state-of-the-art technologies being used are lithium-ion batteries. They are well understood from a way how they can be charged. To address more range for the car, they simply increase the capacity of the battery. So from a charging perspective, it is possible to charge bigger batteries with more capacity in a shorter time by increasing the power into the battery. Also from a usage perspective, we see some car manufacturers going from 400-volt batteries to 800-volt batteries. This drives the need that the charging stations can provide suitable voltages that they can charge this. So these technologies that are yet to be built need to support the voltages ranging from a 400-volt all the way to up 800-volt, and it needs to be adaptable. That when you plug in, that there is communication between the car and the charging station, that it sets all the voltages in an appropriate level. So from a technology perspective, that is possible. If there will be new battery developments ongoing, we need to react to those. And so far, the picture is not clear where the journey is going here. But for the time being, the state-of-the-art batteries, that is what will be used in the next coming years.
Thank you, Harald. If Natalie and the next panel will excuse me, another small questions for you, Harald. So the two-level topology, which is the influence on the distribution grids, but very briefly.
Yes. So the question is what a two-level topology is. Okay, basically you stack two power transistors in series across the 800-volt. So that means you see full swing across each full 800 volts or full 400 volts across a power device. In a multi-level topology, you basically insert more than two. It could be 3, it could be 4 or 8 devices. And then we are talking about 2, 3, 4-level topologies. And those limit the voltage across a power device, meaning the losses in each power device can be smaller. And that means you can drive for smaller form factor and smaller cost. Hope that explained it a little bit.
Thank you, Harald. So I will stop here because I think I overcome 3 minutes, even now 4 minutes, this panel discussion. So thank you very much for these insights from DSO perspective, Ercole, from TSO perspective, Peter, from aggregators perspective, Laurent, from service perspective, Andre, and from technology perspective, Harald. Thanks a lot, and keep continuing with the other panel, which is going to look into the smart charging and regulatory solutions. Thank you.
Thank
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. So now, as in ice hockey, they are saying we are doing a line change. So I would invite Natalie and the speakers for the second panel. And Natalie, I give the word now to you.
Thank you so much, Laurent. If you can put the slide with the speakers on, that would be great. So welcome everyone for this second panel discussion of today's workshop. We are going to be focusing on the additional 2 angles to the previous panel on the smart charging convergence and the need for the agile regulation. Convergence is the big topic, but we try to make it more manageable. I think there was lots of already interesting information shared, and I would like to start with the image that Antonio shared with us on the EV charging roundabout. So the center was perfectly balanced, and there are some directions. We know this the roundabout building will be accelerated. That was mentioned by Sonia. We also see that this acceleration is already being facilitated by a number of market actors. And so the question is how to make sure that this roundabout is going to be built without the future roadblocks for the road construction, meaning not to be built for retrofitting, but built with the end vision in mind. And here I just would like to very briefly mention the work that we've been doing in AOTI related to this vision to come still on the marketplaces, on the multi-sided data-driven and services-driven marketplaces. So it's great to see that we can focus now on 1 or 2 of these components within the marketplaces. And we mentioned that in our overview of the stages of the marketplaces, that infrastructuralization is the first starting point. So I think we're here to discuss this, infrastructuralization in the EV charging, and as well as the convergence. So in order to discuss and reflect on these topics and the 2 papers that were presented, we have Santiago Gallego with Iberdrola. Santiago is Networks Regulation Manager, and so it would be great to hear his perspective from the DSO standpoint. We have David Rua with Inesh Tech. Of course, the innovation doesn't end where we are, so there will be much more needed. So it would be great to hear from David on this. We also have Stefan Neugebauer with us. Yes, hello, Stefan. And Stefan has a very important role for a number of years to come with the 2.0 partnership, again on this balancing of the innovation need as well as the scaling up of the implementations. And we have Lane Peters with us, who did lots of work on actually making sure that whatever is being innovated on, created, is actually finds its way for the implementations, and the side of the consumer and prosumer and energy communities would be on the radar. So let's put everyone on this roundabout, and I would like to give floor to Santiago to share his reflections on the topics raised. Santiago?
Thank you very much, Natalie. Thank you very much for the invitation to this interesting webinar. It's my pleasure to participate in this panel. As it has been mentioned several times today, electromobility is a powerful resource, not only to decarbonize transport, but also to provide flexibility services to the energy system. In this regard, smart charging is a real opportunity in terms of time scheduling and power profiles being used through market-based mechanisms, and of course for an efficient grid planning. If we take a look at the ENTSO-E report, it presents several useful opportunities, and I would like to highlight the ones that I found more relevant from a DSO perspective. For example, the report identifies that reshaping the power load curve is a main opportunity, and this is especially important. I don't know if we can see one of my slides. Yes, thank you. I wanted to illustrate this idea with just a flavor of a study a practical study that we developed in Iberdrola. And this study showed that managing the electric vehicles load, and this is clearly something that smart charging can do. We can help operate the grid.
Santiago, I think we lost you. Yeah. Santiago, can you unmute? For some reason, you muted yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, now you're back. Good.
Something wrong happened. I was saying that ENTSO-E report points out two equally relevant opportunities, being this management of grid congestion and avoid overload on distribution grids. And they have a remarkable impact on the planning's mission of system operators. As this study shows, smart charging could potentially reduce network investments by up to 40% in massive adoption scenarios, increasing investment in digitization and considering the 100% of smart charging. That's very relevant. This efficiency is quite interesting. And as well, the AOT report makes some interesting points in this regard. And I was very pleased to find that many of its recommendations are similar to the outcomes of this use case. If you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. To mention only a couple of them, the AOT report highlights the importance of a smart energy management that optimizes renewable resources utilization for smart charging and also the optimization of overall charging processes and flexibility services provision. That is something that we found as very relevant. And equally important, it is the call for digitization and data governance and sharing as a key factor to improve the innovation in energy services. That is something that we also identified in the report as a very relevant output. The role, in my opinion, the role of smart grids and data analytics are key to enable massive and highly granular impact assessment of the distribution network in the short, but also in the medium and long term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Santiago. I will try to avoid commenting because we're a little bit behind of the schedule, so I'll let just speakers present their positions. If we can continue with David Ruud. David, can you share your perspectives on the roadmap for the Starting Smart?
Yes, I can. I hope that you can hear me well. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to be here to discuss these aspects of electric mobility as part of some of the use cases that we're dealing with in the Interconnect project. So I'll be specifically talking a bit of our work at the Nashtec Interconnect project, which concerns also electric mobility as one of the use cases. So if you could jump to the next slide, then I can start already talking about some of the challenges. So if you can just push further one time. So one of the challenges that we have is, in fact, this already discussed integration with electric infrastructure, which basically needs to support as widespread as possible EV charging in a safe and efficient way, which means that, as you see in the next point, we need to find ways of having convenient locations for EVs to be able to support mobility as democratic as possible. We have a limited availability of public charging. We do know that public charging won't solve all of the issue of electric mobility. And as you will see in the next point, we also need to look at other domains. So as domestic buildings do not have the ability in all cases to support mobility itself, we need to find other solutions, as we have been seeing here today in the next point, which also looks at other buildings such as commercial tertiary buildings to take advantage of cars that are parked there for a significant time, or at least for some time enough for charging their vehicles at a certain point, to actually foster this integration of mobility with other spaces. So this is something that we're also looking in the project. And finally, the next point is then, as we have all looked here in this event, is to exploit smart charging capabilities, because only by using smart charging capabilities can we serve several domains: the user, the grid side, and also those that are fostering electric mobility services, such as building owners and infrastructure owners that are putting into play this part of electric mobility for the access to all users. So we in the project are looking at this. We have a very large project to cover this domain from several angles, and we're actually focused, as you will see, in the interoperability side of this. But in the next slide, you can see what we call the different perspectives for the use cases for EV. So basically, we're contributing to the use of electric vehicles to provide grid support functionalities, as we all heard here. It's an important part of the electric vehicle as a source of flexibility and as a flexible load to be able to provide support to the grid operation. In the next point, you will see that we're also looking at the conveniency, as something already mentioned at the beginning from our colleagues from the EC, where the use of the vehicle needs to be convenient. And we have several parts and several applications in this regard. We know that we need to charge near the infrastructures, which are buildings within the scope of electric mobility within the urban environment, but also the fact that to cover large distances, we need other infrastructure to support this. So in the next point, we are also focusing on the use of other infrastructures, such as households, that we are covering in the project as demonstrators, that also will have their share of impacting not only with the end users, but also with the integration with the grid. One important part to emphasize here as the last point is the fact that when we are looking at this from the retail perspective, so the last point, we're clearly also trying to understand how clusters of EVs can provide services both to the end users, but also to those that naturally aggregate them, that could be in a position to negotiate their service of electric vehicle charging in a differentiated way. We've seen some examples, such as one from Sonai, just in the previous session, to serve different types of users. So jumping ahead to the next slide, just to finalize this first, let's say, the approach that we have. This is just to show what we are doing basically in the project. So we are creating what we call the serifization of electric mobility as one of the use cases. And serifization is creating an ontology-based perspective to unify several domains that we have here, from the end user side on the left side up to the grid domain on the right side. So in between, we need to have control service domain and energy service domain that, in all, with the same, let's say, bus of interoperability in yellow that you see there, we are able to integrate different shapes of interoperability challenges, which are related with the devices themselves that need to speak the same understandable language between them. They need to be represented the same way. If we're talking about apples, it's apples that we need to represent. If we're talking about electric vehicles, it's electric vehicles that we are representing in a way that everyone perceives them as a useful entity. And overall, this interaction between the different domains that we are pushing here for the project is being made on behalf of smart connectors. So what you see there as connectors between domains is something that we are developing, and we're pushing it for the public adoption of our APIs and our own digital infrastructures to make sure that we not only support our own developments in the project, from residential, tertiary, and commercial buildings, integration for electric mobility in this case, but also to foster the necessary development implementation for others to join also the developments in the project. And if they want to push also their own developments that are on top of interoperability frameworks, they can do so together with us. So this is very quickly my challenges that we have identified in the project, and I will be glad to discuss this further in the Q&A.
Thank you, David. So it looks like the it's not only the starting smart but accelerating smart as far as I see over there, and clear convergence is being demonstrated in the slides that you shared. Thank you. I think we might have lost Stefan. I don't see him.
I'm on the line.
Oh, you are? Okay, so I just don't see the picture. All right, so if we can go and hear the intervention by Stefan Neugebauer, And in relation to the, I think you bring the whole community together of a lot of important players that actually will be in charge of the acceleration. So if you can please share your opinion on these topics of convergence and the need for the agile regulation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Natalie. So I'm happy to join this panel on behalf of the public-private partnership towards zero emission in road transport. But please allow me to give some initial comments from the perspective of a vehicle manufacturer, because I'm working for BMW. So if we can go to the next slide. We have a clear target for the decarbonization of road transport, and electrification is one of the most important technology. Not the only one, we have also hydrogen and renewable fuels, but no doubt electrification is the most important technology. For 2030, we need to bring into the market round about 50% of the new vehicle registration, round about 50%, with an electrified powertrain. So more than 50% of the vehicles will need an electric power connection, more than 50%. And in Europe, we are living in a free society. We have to convince the consumer to buy a battery electric vehicle or a plug-in electric vehicle. And what is the prerequisite for buying such a vehicle? It is the charging infrastructure. If you do not have the charging infrastructure, you will never buy an electric vehicle. That's for sure. And the electric charging is quite different to the charging of a conventional vehicle. And this is something we need to understand. With a conventional vehicle, you refuel the vehicle when you are using the vehicle. You start your trip, and then you see, oh, I need fuel. You stop at the filling station and you refuel your vehicle in some minutes. For the recharging of a battery electric vehicle, it's quite different. It's quite different. You have to recharge it when you do not use it. So this means you need to charge it at home. You need to charge it at work. You need to charge it wherever the car is parked for a longer period. And in order to achieve our decarbonization targets, we think that in 2030, we need up to 6 million public charging points, but more important, up to 60 million private charging points in Europe, up to 60 million private charging points. And for heavy duty, it's a different story, around about 50,000 charging points focused on the 10T core network. So this is mostly at the highways. So this is setting the scene. And then it's absolutely clear that this is a challenge for the grid, for the TSO and for the DSO. And knowing this, please let us have a look at the second slide. Here I would like to give you an insight about the new co-program partnership towards zero emission in road transport. Here we tried to generate the system approach for decarbonized road transport with 4 pillars. And one pillar is, and you can see it in the red circle, it's the integration of the battery electric vehicle into the energy system and the related charging infrastructure. This is exactly what this panel is about. So we need in this pillar, we need to create the flexibility of charging the vehicles, as all the speakers before underlined is. We need system flexibility and the local flexibility. So there's a lot to do with the TSOs, with the DSOs, with the vehicle developers. And we want to do this together in this community, in this towards zero emission road transport public-private partnership, the towards zero partnership. And to be honest, we have a very, very good and engaged community coming from the automotive sector. But to be clear, there is a room for more integration of TSOs and DSOs. So if you are interested to collaborate with the automotive sector, and I think you are, otherwise you wouldn't join this panel, please be informed about this partnership and welcome to this partnership if you are interested. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stefan. So if we're having impact, at least this invitation is one of those. So I understood you do believe in the convergence, and I think later on we'll ask about the agile regulation, but implicitly it was stated there. Thank you, Stefan. Lane, I think on the road of starting smart and accelerating smart, I think we've heard about the system readiness or a willingness. We also heard about the wider ecosystems approach and needs, as was mentioned. Now the topics of governance and services, consumer services, depth and breadth probably were not covered yet. And so floor is yours to reflect on the papers and share your opinion. Thank you so much, Lane.
Yeah, thank you. Following what has been said before, first of all, thank you, and everyone welcome, and also a good afternoon from my side. Antonio this morning said that he emphasized really the role of electric vehicles, both the unidirectional ones and the bidirectional ones, and that their role is mainly the flexibility that can be offered with fast response. And that's also reflected in this session today. And it's really important that we understand where we are today and that we see that in several countries, there's not yet a market for it. And that's where Mark van Stippel this morning correctly emphasized the need for test projects and the support DG Energy is giving to these test projects to really understand how it works and what it could be. And from all the session, it's very clear that we understand the potential of electric mobility, and Antonio dived into the consumer that needs to be seduced in order to maximize the value of electric vehicles, where Francois also mentioned that it's really relevant to make that distinction between public and private charging, and we will need both. And it's really important to understand what public and private charging actually means, because today we charge about 85% of all car charging sessions at home. So that also implies that this private charging is a very important market in advancing to a further electrification. And so Francois also mentioned the need to change the habits. And I really like that Robin said earlier today also, you have 300 different cards, and the ones who own an electrical vehicle will know that sometimes they end up in another country and they can't charge. I had it, I know how it feels, but it's a pretty problem, and it doesn't help us in seducing that end consumer. So can I have my next slide already? Yeah, the next one. Then, yes, so I made this more provocative image to really show that in order to seduce that end consumer, we need to make sure that the different regulations and the member state implementations of them are focusing, or today actually focusing a lot of the details of the charging, and they're not linking it adequately to the implementation of flexibility in the system, for example. Referring to the Renewable Energy Directive and the Electricity Market Directive, and to the concept of collective self-consumers and energy communities, you see the emphasis on self-consumption. Now, self-consumption is something different than flexibility, and it might at a very specific moment be the same, but a lot of moments it's not. And so we see that on the one hand, we really need to move to that flexibility, but then on the other hand, we're giving incentives towards self-consumption, and also the implementation in the member states moves towards that self-consumption. So it's not really helping to provide the right financial triggers that Stefan also mentioned to seduce that end consumer to buy an electric vehicle and consequently to charge it the way it makes sense. And that's important. So if you can go to my next and last slide, then what we need to do, and the car drove away, picking up already on the market,
The
goes
consumer.
really fast, but we need to make a market, and that's really important. We need to develop an enabling framework that seduces that end consumer to move to electric vehicles and smart charging with uniform signals from the different regulations and a uniform communication. And the added flexibility that we would be able to create with an uptake of the market will really help us in the transition to a fully renewable energy system. But the complexity and the interrelations between not only the aspects of AFID, EPBD, Renewable Energy Directive and others, but it's really the point that we have to do is we need not to think out of the box to make that market happen. We actually need to open all the boxes and then start thinking how we can align them to make that market. So I know it was a bit of a provocative image that I gave, but I hope it helps to get the discussion going as well.
Thank you, Elaine. As long as the consumer comes back in that car, I think it's fine. And a little bit on the 2 points that you've mentioned on the convergence and on the smooth services. I think the level of the services, support services for the EV charging stations should be exceeding the level of services what the consumer already is used to on the conventional charging. That is one of the ways to seduce the consumer. How many times, we cannot reach anyone and it's just phone discussion that is needed, if something doesn't work or the card is not supported. So that's one level. And second level I would like to mention is also if we have the brand provider of the charging associated with at the same station of the refueling station, for example, but then the level of service is completely separated. So if you have a problem with the EV charging at the gas station, inside the gas station at the service, no one is going to support or provide any of this. So this harmonization, when we're talking about the convergence, and if we have the same brand for the two, the level of the support should be at the same level. So that's one of the points also how to seduce the consumer with the services. Thank you so much, Lane. To be continued, it doesn't end here. I'm looking at the Slido board and we have 3 questions here. Given the fact that we're slightly behind the schedule, so I would like to go directly into the questions. We have a question from Rolf Riemenschneider, and the question to Stefan. Does the 2.0 partnership on harmonization standards across cars, wall boxes, EMS, appliances, solar inverters, etc., does 2.0 plan to liaison with associations like Cherian or BACnet or EUBus? Stefan, could you address this, please?
Sorry, I'm not sure if I got the question in the right way, but to explain the 2.0 partnership, it's a research partnership. It is a pre-competitive research partnership. So we are not active in regulation in the direct way, but our target is and our objective is to give an advice based on technical knowledge and advice to regulation. But in regulation specific, we are not engaged. Was this the question?
Harmonization of standards, that was the question.
Harmonization of standards?
Yes, across cars, wall boxes, energy management systems, appliances, solar inverters, etc., etc. Is that the ambition or not?
This is one ambition. For sure, the harmonization is needed, it's absolutely needed. And I like very much the intervention of Lean. I learned at this panel that the whole system is so complex that it is hard to make a direct regulation what is the better and what is not so good. I like very much the idea that at the end we need an open market, and for an open market the harmonization of technical standards and protocols and so on is a prerequisite, I think.
Okay, and the second question was if you're planning to liaison with associations, with other associations, that Cherian, BACnet, and EBUS.
So the partnership is based on the collaboration of many stakeholders and many associations, and we are in direct contact also with ETP-SNet, the technology platform for the electro grid. So I think by this way the electric side is well covered, and we are happy to collaborate with any association which can bring an additional value.
Thank you so much, Stefan. And very quickly to another question that we have here from David Pozo. I assume that aggregators, charging stations, building energy management systems, or even distribution grid operators would have access to the EV's data, such as the state of the charge and other data related to the vehicle. Is there any added value for the EV end users for this data that is shared, and how it is envisioned, the EV data management is envisioned? I think that's what he means. I think it's the question's not addressed specifically to any of the panelists. So anyone wants to address this?
Yeah, it's a very relevant question. The amount of data that is available is, you cannot just mandate that everything is available to everyone. What I mean with that is, for example, the state of health of a battery can provide a lot of competition relevant information that a manufacturer does not want to share. So I think the first question is, which data are we going to share? And this could be the expected range that you want to have at the end of a charging session. It could be the state of charge of the battery at a certain moment. And of course, the technical data, like the amount of amperes that I can give to the car. I need to limit that given the details of the car as well. It could also be a step further, saying, okay, my ideal charging is this for the health of the battery. And I think as an end consumer, knowing myself, and we have 2 electrical vehicles, it is information that I'm happy to have. I'm happy to understand that information. For an aggregator, of course, and for the grid, it's important to understand what is expected from that vehicle in which time frame. So that information is necessary to really make that market happening. With regards to the aggregator, of course, he needs that information to be able to plan, but you could go even one step further and link the aggregator really to the vehicle and not to the charging station. And then you also need that access to the smart meter data that is connected to the charger. What we see is there is definitely a hesitance to share all that information, but I think it should be mandated.
Thank you so much. I see Stefan's hand raised. Go ahead, Stefan.
Thank you. So for sure, for a smart system, we need some data. But in our point of view, we need to accept that the data in the first step, they are private and they are confidential, and the owner of the data is the owner of the car or the user of the car. So if the first step is that the owner of the data will accept that they are used by third parties. Then the second question is, what are these data used for? Are they used for commercial idea to earn money? Then it's up to the owner of the data if he wants to provide this data and what's his benefit if someone wants to earn money with this. If the data are used for the benefit of the whole society or the whole system, then it's a different case. And here we think that these data should be shared to the benefit of the society. So there is no answer to the question if data should be shared or should be open. We must be and discuss this in a very, very, very differentiated way. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. David, since you're working on the use cases related to this question, Could you probably answer the question, is there any added value for the EVs end users for the data to be shared, or what are the incentivization, I think what's it's meant?
I think there are plenty of benefits for a lot of stakeholders when sharing information. It's a hard topic because as Stefan was mentioning, it pertains to the personal domain, which is always a tricky situation. But assuming that the end user is able to see added value in sharing its own information for electric vehicle charging or otherwise, or any other service, it needs to come from the service providers, this valorization of the data to provide something that the end user would valorize, as for instance, ways of charging better their vehicle, ways of making sure that the battery is charged into a condition that it's long lasting, ways of showing that the CO2 footprint of the charging process is as low as possible. And all of this needs to be tied together with several stakeholders. Not sure if the state of charge is, for instance, one specific example that we need to have that directly from the car. We've seen that so far that hasn't been an issue in terms of adopting smart charging strategies. With the ISO 15118, a lot of information will go back and forth between the EV and the EV supply equipment, so the charger. And one of that information could be the state of charge. But you have other information such as the time you take to charge your car, the time that you're parked, the amount of energy that you take, so that the service provider, such as the ones managing the infrastructure and the charging of the vehicle, can offer an added value to the end user. And as we've seen also from the SONAI case, they can also cluster other conveniency services for your EV. So why not allow that information to be exchanged if it's fully known to the end user which information is being exchanged, and he perceives exactly what's the added value of having that information to a domain that it's outside of their own sphere, but it has a clear advantage to him. So it's a big discussion. It will take us the whole day to be here, but some of it's clearly could be used for the greater good, for the grid, for the renewable integration, for the end user itself to perceive how to charge the car and so forth. So, and a lot of it also comes, as Stefan also mentioned, with the education, where people need to understand that they need to charge their vehicles a different way that they would, let's say, charge the ICE mobility. So it's a big discussion, but for sure, data and its valorization is on top of the agenda. But the discussion is always
Thank you.
difficult.
Now, very quickly, Santiago, are the grid operators ready for this multi-sided markets and participation?
Yeah, coming back to the data, I think that it's a valuable input for improving modeling, and it should be adopted to perform robust simulations of grids impact. But not only for this, but also data analytics have proven to be a very useful tool for optimization scenarios, but also to define new efficient market features and proactively involve electric vehicle owners, as Stefan said, in participating in smart charging solutions. So in my opinion, I think that when well managed data, it's key to unlock the potential of electric vehicles and to provide energy and flexibility services that we request.
Thank you, Santiago. I'm getting the signal from Laurent that we need to wrap up. Unfortunately, we have interesting presentation coming up from Antonello Monti now, and the discussion will continue. I'm sure we're going to have more opportunities to dive into these topics. They're not going away. So thank you so much for your participation, and I hand off to Laurent.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you all. I think listening to this panel, for example, the open source approach could be answer to many of these questions. We invited Antonello Monti, who I don't think that I should introduce because I think who is really working in this energy domain knows his name. Today he is here with us under his LF Energy hat. So Anto, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm also very much honored the position I have now after all this very interesting panel to talk about the role of open source and in particular the vision from the Linux Foundation Energy. As mentioned, I'm here as the chair of the Technical Advisory Council of the Foundation, but also prepare my presentation in cooperation with Shuli Goodman, who is the main, she's the main architect of the whole Linux Foundation Energy story. Next slide, please. So first of all, I think the topic today was to understand if EV charging is only a building block or a game changer. I think we got a clear feeling that is a potential killer application with huge impact that goes beyond the mobility part. Particularly appreciated the comments related to the impact it may have on the network expansion, mentioning up to 40%. But what emerged clearly from the discussion are a few points that I would like to summarize, given also that we are towards the end of the event. I think everybody agreed that we need harmonization. And what I think is more important, we need a holistic approach. It was clear it's not just the problem of the grid, it's not just the problem of the car manufacturer, it's not just TSO level, it's not just DSO level. So that's why we need to orchestrate in a very large sense what we need. And I think what is also important, that's one of the main points behind the Linux Foundation Energy, is that we realize when we talk about digital solution, we need something that goes beyond the standard way of thinking, going beyond just what we call normally standards. And last but not least, another point that is really at the heart of the idea of the Linux Foundation is that we can and we should solve this problem, not only looking at Europe, but even having a broader approach. And that fits perfectly with the vision of the Linux Foundation Energy and the vision with which we interpret the role of open source in this transition. Next slide, please. Yeah, the main point is, if you look at the challenge, it's clear that it's something that we cannot do alone. And that's why the cooperation, as mentioned also in the Towards Zero Alliance, we are talking to a level right now that is still in the pre-competitive, and it can still stay at that level for good part of what we are talking about. And then isolation doesn't make any sense. Next slide, please. So we need a mass collaboration. And what we offer with the Linux Foundation is a worldwide platform, a concept that has been successful already in other sectors. I will bring you some interesting examples. And that's why we think that looking at open source is the key assets to achieve what has been discussed today. I think the European Commission has been already a good supporter of this vision in all the project development right now. When you apply for Horizon 2020 or now Horizon Europe, the push for openness, in particular open source, is great. We need to bring that thing together so that we don't get a lot of nice solutions sitting in the GitHub and nobody using them, but we need to coordinate and work together. Next slide, please. And this is possible because we build a unique network of cooperation. Here we see some other key members of the foundation. We have new applications constantly coming. There are some strategic members that really, the one that started, had the idea to do it. But if you look also at the general members, this list is growing. We expect in this month to have at least 3 other key partners to join and bring this family to be bigger. And what I would like to say also, if you look at the partners and if you see the participation in the meeting, what I really interesting it is definitely a European-driven effort. So even if you think about Linux as an American, mostly association, that the LF Energy has been so far very much close to the European approach and the European way of feeling, so that the key partners are, for the most, European. Next slide, please. And what we can achieve has been already shown in many sectors. I pick only one example, that is the automotive. So the automotive grade Linux is, let's say, the equivalent of the Linux Foundation Energy. And there are now 5 of the top 10 automakers aligned, and this accounts for 70% of the vehicles that are produced. And also the OEM are involved, and this is where this things makes the difference. And bring into the electricity system, think about the previous slide, the DSOs, the TSOs, and also the manufacturers sitting at the same boards and the same meetings, discussing together how to work in a collaborative way. This is what is unique of the approach, and that also for the mobility can be a great game changer. Next, please. What is important to understand is also, for those who are not familiar with the idea of using open source, well, you are using open source, even if you don't know it. And we are right now in some sector reaching the point where open source is 80% of the code that is running. And it goes, as you see here, from supercomputing, where actually reaching the highest level goes to close to 100%, to the telecom, where we are still extremely high, more in the range of 80%, going down to other sectors like finance, healthcare, entertainment, and as mentioned already, automotive. It's now for energy to jump on this and show that in the real life, a good percentage of our software is actually open source. Next, please. What we've been doing, that's why, as I mentioned before, looking at the results of the workshop, we did an holistic approach. We started looking at the overall picture. So DLFE is looking at the whole value chain, all the aspects that are involved. So we started with the taxonomy that you see here at the top level. Then if you go to the next level from the taxonomy, we started populating. Could you go to the next slide, please? Going to the next level of click, because I all the, sorry. Populating the taxonomy, you can click even further. Sorry, this was an animation, didn't expect. Going further, again, we started populating, click. This is an annoying animation I didn't expect to be there when I checked the slide, I apologize. And you see that we have been populating the taxonomy with all the components that will make the system possible. And then if you go to the next again, what we have been doing also is populating with projects. Projects that are fulfilling this taxonomy allow us to recognize how much are we covering the overall sectors and how that is possible. So for example, here, very close to my heart, that's how I got involved in the foundation, the Sonia project, offering a grid operator open source platform based on microservice is a vision on how to build an open solution for grid operator in which will fit perfectly the discussion we are doing right now, being the coordination of charging, just one more microservice. So that's why those type of open architecture allow us to bring in building blocks in an easy way, adding new use cases without changing anything on what is there. So big recuperation of the previous asset, flexibility, openness, and possibility to adapt rapidly with the evolution of whatever happens outside. Next slide, please. From that vision, we are now turning the story around in a very exciting committee and in building from there a layered architecture, identifying from the taxonomy what are the key building blocks to build an overarching architecture. And here you see some of the previous projects rearranged in their level, and here also where we identify where new projects should be started and where we need more members that can contribute and bring their knowledge to the foundation. Next, please. Coming, and then to complete also my presentation, a few points specifically about e-mobility. In the Linux Foundation, we recently had a discussion about the role of the e-mobility, and we see, if we had to answer the question, is a game changer or just a building block, is, in the view of many of the people in the foundation, a game changer. And actually, we see here as a very important way to demonstrate that we need to make the infrastructure as non differentiated and interoperable to drive the innovation. That's where avoiding as much as possible to build a solution. Proprietary software will enable a scaling of the innovation and a fast adoption. And we bring that same experience that happen in the telco business, in the cloud business, we can bring it here and achieve the same level of scalability and rapid adoption that we really need to achieve the picture that emerged about between now and 2030. Next slide, please. And yeah, some other technical aspect. Yeah, at the end, there is a right interesting synergies about some of the projects we are doing, like the microgrid project in DC. DC is critical for mobility, it was shown. So even here, we are working together in a large effort like the foundation allows to find synergies. It's not listed as a project right now, but there is a clear agreement in the foundation that a project supporting mobility interoperability will start very soon. And we are, just getting the element to get it running. And what is interesting is that also in a discussion of cooperation between European Commission, the Department of Energy, and the Canadian agency, we identify e-mobility as a topic that actually requires also to go beyond Europe. And this is, again, from the customer perspective, if the car manufacturer can envision that the solutions that we adopt are not just European, but worldwide adopted when it comes to e-mobility, there will be other opportunities of cost reduction at every element. And that makes, from the point of view of making things, interesting to the customers, it's a very important element. And again, an overarching worldwide umbrella is then, a key asset to make sure that this can really happen. I think with this, next slide, I basically come to my conclusion. Here, the reference to Shuli, she's the boss. And if you want, I gave you also my link, my position in Aachen. Be happy to be in touch if you're interested to get involved in the foundation. The door is always open for new input. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anto, for this presentation. I think this was a really interesting closure of this event today. So I would just like to thank everyone for joining us. Also, thank you for the speakers bringing their rich variety of views to this discussion. We are hoping that we can continue on the basis of this. And also special thanks to the organizing team, Rolf, Natalie, and of course Norella, and the rest of the ENTSO-E team, especially Carlotta, who was all along behind the screen. And the recordings and the slides will be shared through the ENTSO-E and I think the IoTI websites as well. Thank you, and have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Many thanks, Laurent.